Yeah, I think you put it so eloquently, right? I mean, I realized very quickly that I did not have the skill set to manage the emotions, analyze the emotions, develop that growth mindset, analyze the problems. So it took me a long time to understand this and start, taking control first of my own understanding of money, of my own financial, relationship with money, and then start planning towards, financial mastery. So, and it is a process. I don't think it's something that's going to happen in 1 minute or even a week or a month.
I'm a physician, but yet I'm so ignorant. And that's how I realized that our training makes us very tunnel vision. And the reason I bring this up, which comes back to your point, a lot of my colleagues feel trapped.
How's my financial health, Doc? Welcome to the Financial Literacy Podcast for healthcare professionals, where financial security and wealth topics are not a taboo.
Okay, welcome back everybody to How is My Financial Health Doc podcast, and I'm your host Vuket Tran. Today we have a specialist with us today, and I mean specialist in many aspects. He is a specialist. In fact, he's a physician. He is a pediatric hemonc who practices in Halifax, and I'm talking about Dr. Ketan Kulkarni. And Ketan and I kind of met on LinkedIn after he was on another podcast, and I really, really enjoyed what he was talking about. And Ketan was very insightful in what he was saying. And if you have seen him on LinkedIn, you will know what I'm talking about. And so today, where I'm taking this opportunity to maybe pick his brain and understand some of the insights that he can provide us. And this particular podcast is more philosophical, more reflexive. And I want people to take away from this podcast not more so much of didactic learning. Like I we are very exposed to, you go to a conference and you sit down and they tell you recipe ABC and you should do AYZ to improve your patient's outcome. Well, this particular podcast is not about do ABC to improve your personal outcome. This is really meant for reflection, meant for deep thinking, and maybe rethinking how you think about things and how you think about your own personal finances. Welcome to the show, Dr. Ketan Kulkarni.
Thank you, Wu. It's a real pleasure to be here and share some of my experiences and also learn from you as we enter this journey. Yeah.
Very well. So I've introduced you as pediatric heme onc in Halifax, but that's not a very good introduction. It definitely does not says everything about you. So tell us a little bit more about you, but also you're a physician like me and like many of my listeners. Tell us a little bit about your journey. How did you come to where you are now? Because, I mentioned about your LinkedIn post. I mentioned about your own personal financial journey. Let us through some of what you have learned throughout your life to get to where you are now. Share that with us a little bit.
Yeah, 100%. And I think your first question is amazing because like, the 100,000 other physicians in Canada and the million other in North America, I started as a really good, A plus grade or whatever, 4.3, whatever GPA student with an intention of becoming a physician, changing the world, doing my best for the patients and, trained for the 14 years and, started my clinician researcher role. And 5 years later, I had my first promotion, I had my growing family, I had, my first house and, making a little bit of money. And I found myself burnt out. It was a huge identity shift that happened following that. I said, well, according to the society's parameters of success, I have tried to do everything that I'm supposed to do and everything I'm told to do, and yet I feel weird, and that helped me really seek out training. And I did a lot of leadership training, which then introduced me to coaching. And that was a game changer. And it helped me really deep think about the way I think and, my biases and, my challenges, my baggage that I had to process. And then I became a certified coach myself. And then as I started aligning myself, I realized that I was pigeonholed into this narrow identity. I mean, it's nothing wrong to be a physician or a subspecialist or whatever. It's a great identity, but that's not necessarily the only identity we need to chase. I knew that I was after a broader identity of a human being, an excellent human being who's also an excellent physician.
I'll take them step by step here. You mentioned about, our whole ourselves, not just us as physicians, us as a person, as a father, as a brother, as a husband. So we're not just physicians. And unfortunately, in our training, it is very tunnel vision. Our training is very tunnel vision. And I realized that only as I was doing my MBA.
Yeah.
I realized how tunnel vision we are in our training. We only talk about medicine and pills and pharmacodynamics and whatever you want to talk about in medicine. But when I sit around with other people and we're having dinner, especially if you sit around with other physicians, we talk shop. I think that's natural. But when I sit down with other people who are not in medicine, I have no clue what they're talking about, right? They're talking about geopolitics. They're talking about science. You know what? I feel so embarrassed when I hear people talk about wine. And I know nothing about wine, and that's when I realized, oh my God, I am so ignorant. I'm a physician, but yet I'm so ignorant. And that's how I realized that our training makes us very tunnel vision. And the reason I bring this up, which comes back to your point, a lot of my colleagues feel trapped.
Yeah.
Because obviously I'm in emergency medicine. A lot of my colleagues are in emergency medicine. And you know how devastating it is in frontline medicine, especially emergency medicine.
Well, especially COVID, right? I mean, you guys really got the short end of the stick there. I mean, there was
Absolutely. And I would, if you read the report, the article from 2019, 87% of emergency physicians across Canada are burnt out.
Wow.
87, right? That's crazy. So
I thought it was crazy, but 87% is insane.
Right, it's insane. So a lot of my colleagues are feeling burnout and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because if they stop practicing emergency medicine, they have nothing to fall on. And that is because we've been so tunnel vision in our training, we haven't developed the other part of ourselves.
Yeah.
We have abandoned our hobbies. We've abandoned our other passion. We've abandoned the other side of our identity. And so if I'm no longer an emergency doctor, what am I? It's a very, very existential question that many of us cannot answer.
Yeah. And, just to highlight, I mean, we are no way saying that don't be the physician that you are meant to be or trained to be. And most of us are trained so well, right? I think it's a highly coveted, valuable skill set. I think the question that's very fundamental, like you said, that's existential crisis question is that can we be a fulfilled, flourished person who then as a consequence is a good doctor and not vice versa? That, if you're
Absolutely
an identity of an whatever emerged doc in a tertiary care center who's a clinician researcher, CIHR funded, whatever, but doesn't have good health and good relationships and good hobbies and something to look forward to and is 87% chance of burnout. Well, that doesn't paint a very good picture, does it? I mean, that's a very concerning, urgent question to handle.
It's very devastating. And another point you made is, learning about yourself from inside out and not from outside in. And And unfortunately, in our training, we've always learned ourselves from outside in, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I get feedback from my preceptors, I get feedback from my mentors, I get feedback from my teachers, etc., from my patients, and I'm worried about my scores and whatnot. But when was the last time I had to look deep into myself and know thyself? You can't do any financial planning, financial wealth without knowing thyself first.
Yeah. It is so important. I mean, I'm hoping and I'm wishing that one day in future this becomes part of the curriculum. This becomes part of the process, that we don't just train people to be whoever, electrophysiology, cardiologist, whatever it is, but become well-trained physicians. And this is part of the training, that they really are able to reflect on who they are and then amalgamate that with who they want to be.
Well, it's very interesting because we are professionals. We self-direct.
Yeah.
We control to an extent our professional life. We're not an employee. We don't take a salary from the hospital. At least many of us don't. So we get to dictate our own professional journey, but we've never been taught how to do it properly.
Right.
But yet we can and we should.
Yeah.
And so, but we've never been properly taught how to do so. So coaching, finding a coach is absolutely, I think, crucial.
Yeah, I think you put it so eloquently, right? I mean, I realized very quickly that I did not have the skill set to manage the emotions, analyze the emotions, develop that growth mindset, analyze the problems, resolution of conflict, crucial communication, and like that skill set really needed to be developed. I mean, it's something that's a lifelong training, but we need to bring it up in everybody to a certain level, because that's when we'll really start experiencing fulfillment, and authenticity, and really feel as if we are full to the brim, but with positivity, not with toxicity.
Absolutely. So now let me try to tie this back into the core of my podcast, which is personal finance. And you've alluded to this many times already. So let's talk about growth mindset. Let's talk about scarcity mindset. Sorry, I'm having trouble today. Scarcity mindset. Let's talk about knowing thyself and our own personal journey. So maybe share with us your own personal financial journey, maybe very short. And then we'll talk a little bit about the financial journeys of most of our colleagues. How does that happen? And where are the different traps that you and I have seen people go down? Let's just start with that.
Wow, that's a phenomenal question. I think I haven't been asked that one before, so I really like the question. So I think I'm going to start with I've been asked by Kevin MD and others to write a few articles recently, and you may have seen some of them. So the fundamental question, and I'm going to go sort of start forward and go backward. So the fundamental question is, what does money mean to you, or what does money mean to me? And I think most of us get that wrong. Most of us think that, it's the pursuit of wealth. You're going to make X million dollars in your life, and that's your retirement fund and this and that and everything else. Or I want to be a multimillionaire. Some people say that. Other people say, I don't care about money. I'll let somebody else manage that. So I think it's about fundamentally defining what money is and then what money means to you. So I think there is abundant data to suggest that money is a means goal. It's a means goal to your end goals, which include your health, your lifestyle, your work, your relationships, your whatever, spiritual journey, your travel, everything that you want to do. But money is the resource that is going to fund all of those. And that is why I think we need to fundamentally explore and understand how we ourselves look at money, and really explore what your authentic goals are based on knowing thyself, that you said. And this is so crucial, I think, because in my coaching journey and experience, I'll be brutally honest, I get asked this question all the time. So what do people ask you all the time? It's not so much career and all that. People, like you said, are self-directed. Like 8 out of 8, sometimes 9 out of 10 questions are about finances. The people say, well, I've got X amount of money, where do I invest? How much money do I need to retire? How much money do I save every month? What are these investment classes? or, what should money mean to me? How much money should I make? Should I work harder? It's always around the financial realm that people ask. So I think it's, in my experience, at least in the physician world, there's never been a better time to really deep dive into finances. And it doesn't mean you got to get an MBA or, become a finance master, but it's really about exploring and understanding your relationship with money. And it's, at least in my experience, so many of us have either not explored that relationship, it's very underdeveloped, or frankly speaking, we don't have a healthy relationship with money. We automatically assume that money is bad, it's not needed, we shouldn't be after money, it's a service job. Of course, it's a service job. We're serving others for making the health better. But we are getting compensated for it. And, if we are like most other people, we are not going to live off the grid. We are going to need a certain amount of money to fund our lifestyle. So it took me a long time to understand this and start, taking control first of my own understanding of money, of my own financial, relationship with money, and then start planning towards, financial mastery. So, and it is a process. I don't think it's something that's going to happen in 1 minute or even a week or a month. In my experience, people who are living that kind of financial independence, irrespective of the number, I don't think the number matters so much. It could be 50,000, 100,000, or a million, or 10 million, whatever it is. But once they are living their ideal lifestyles and have a healthy relationship with money, I don't think the rest matters. They don't care why Jeff Bezos is making so many million per year, or that this entrepreneur is making so much money, or somebody else who's a social entrepreneur is living off $40,000 a year. It really is identifying what your authentic self wants, needs, requires, in terms of your ideal lifestyles to finance it, and then crafting a financial journey that's going to be concordant. And it can evolve over time. It's not like it's set in stone, but I think it's really high time that all our colleagues put in this effort, take the first step towards sort of mastering this. At least ask yourself, what is your ideal lifestyle? How much should it cost? And it's not that difficult to figure out, right? I mean, all of us know that, the average Canadian household income is about $80,000, and in the current inflation era, that's not a lot of money, right? I mean, if people who are physicians, they have a lot of debt, they're working long hours, it's not very difficult to figure out what is a good amount of income in Canada. But I think, we need to talk about it, right? I think we need to discuss the numbers. I mean, Canada is so diverse. A job that makes X amount of dollar may be way better than the job that makes 2X amount of dollars, depending on the effort involved and depending on the night calls involved. And so it's such a complicated phenomenon that, as a physician community or as a professional community, we need to come out and really take charge of our financial journeys. And I think step one is to take the self-responsibility that we need to at least examine critically our finances and our financial journey. And you may not want to manage your investments and all that. That's a whole different scale. But even if we take a critical look at exploring our finances, exploring our financial journey, our relationship with money, I think that's a lot of mileage gained right there.
I mean, you've said a lot of things, and I agree with all of them. I'm just going to add a few more color to it. We have a very bad relationship with money because we don't understand what money is. We think money is the end all and be all, where it's not. You mentioned money is a tool, and I've been saying this, and many people are saying this. Money is just a tool to take you to your goal. So that's the one misconception. The other misconception is, you've said it as well. When I ask my colleagues and my peers, hey, how are you doing? How are the finances? What are you thinking about doing, in the next 30 years, And the first thing they said, well, I invested in this. No, that's not what I asked you. I didn't ask you what you were investing in, or what stocks, or what Spotify, or what crypto you bought. What I'm asking is, what is your overall goal? What is it that you want to achieve? It's more in, think about it, it's more an airy-fairy type of question, but it really drives to the goal and how you're going to get to the goal. And money is just a tool to get there. Money is not dirty. Money is not bad. Money is not good. Money doesn't make you happy. What makes you happy is achieving your goal. Money
Yeah.
itself doesn't make you happy. So I hear a lot of people say money doesn't buy happiness. That's wrong. Money does buy happiness if you achieve your goal. Money itself doesn't buy happiness. There's a
Yeah.
lot of misconception and misidea about money. You said something as well is it's not the how, right? The how is when do I invest? When do I jump into the market? When do I get out of the market? Should I buy Spotify? Should I buy Tesla? It's not about the how. It's about why.
Yeah. It's the why.
Why
Correct.
am I doing this?
That's
Why
awesome.
am I doing this? No, I love Simon Sinek when he started with that. I'm like, that's an amazing question. And finally, you said something that I think people need to reflect on this. And that is the question of knowing thyself. I was the first one to say my MBA did nothing for me in terms of personal finance. You did your MBA, your mini MBA, and at the end of the day, do you know how to manage your finances? No, I don't. I know how to manage corporate finance. Okay, fair enough, but I don't know how to manage my personal. I had to learn. Like, it took me 8 to 10 years to do this, to learn how to do personal finance. But what I'm trying to say is, and you've probably heard this many times because I hear it every single day. Dr. Tran, I know my body. I know best my body. I know how I feel. But you're still not a doctor. You still need me to diagnose.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I'm the same way. I know where my pain points are. I know what I need to pay. I know what type of lifestyle I need, but I
Mhm.
still can't manage my money because I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
And if I want a pediatric hemonc, I'm not going to go to my accountant, right? If I want to manage my money properly, I'll go to my financial planner. If I wanted to manage this pediatric anemia, I'll go to a ped hemonc. And so while I understand my own personal pain points, I still don't know what I don't know, and I need the expertise. And so that's very important to realize. Yes, we need to take control of our finances, but it doesn't necessarily mean we have to manage everything.
No, no. I mean, especially when it comes to taxation and, estate planning and complicated transactions, capital gains stripping and all, like it's complicated, right? I mean, you can take it to a certain level, but then you are going to need advanced expertise, absolutely, not to undermine. I think the value of a good financial planner is same as value of a physician in our lives, that, they are able to really use, sophisticated tools to figure out some questions, and it can make a big difference, right? I mean, if your tax planning and proper corporate planning is not up to the mark, then it could be a real problem on the other end when you're trying to use your assets or this and that. So I agree so much. I mean, this is a great topic for an entire conference. I know we have some great initiatives coming up, but we'll keep our audience intrigued about those as time comes. But I think the take home really for me is that first few steps is very, very important, that we need to sort of take the responsibility and not just ignore it or defer it to somebody else, that I'm not going to look at this kind of thing.
So let's dive into that because that's a good segue. We were going to talk about, cognitive traps, cognitive bias that physicians that you and I have seen make. So I'll let you start. Share with us what are some of the traps that you've seen a lot of your colleagues and peers have made in relation to, their own personal finance.
Yeah, I think that's again, you got some phenomenal questions there. So I think the common ones, maybe I'll talk only about two or three so that it's more impactful. I mean, the first, I was actually recently asked to write a chapter about this. The first is the if-then hypothesis, right? I mean, most of us feel that if I achieve XYZ, or if I make X million dollars, if I do this, that, and whatever else, then I will be happy. I think it's the biggest trap, right? I mean, so many people feel, well, when they become the emeritus professor, that's when they have achieved enough and they'll be happy. When they go to the next vacation, they'll be happy. I think we as humans, this is a protective mechanism, right? I mean, our mind is constantly telling us that that's the next goalpost, to achieve. That's the next thing to achieve. As physicians, we are achievers, right? So I think it's very common for us to fall into that arrival fallacy trap that, when I become the well-known national subspecialist in this area, I'm going to be very, very happy as a recognized person. I mean, that's all great, go do all of that. but you don't have to postpone your fulfillment and happiness to that particular goal. Because we just know that when you get to that goal, it's going to mean that the goalpost moves and you want to become the international expert or make twice the money or publish twice the papers or whatever else that the new goal may be, the new shiny object may be. The second trap I often find physicians kind of fall into is the hyperachiever, right? I mean, but the hyperachiever is not in all areas of life. It often is in one territory of life. They like it's like we see a lot of people are married to their work, right? They are workaholic and 24/7, all about work. And we often tend to, maybe it's the culture that we have come to, that we put these things on pedestal, right? I mean, if you leave on time, you're not a good enough doctor. If you took the weekend off and didn't respond to the email, you're not a good enough doctor. If you didn't publish 10 papers a year, you didn't have a good year. So we've had these arbitrary goals set up, or intangible goals that have been set up, and we celebrate those when data actually suggests that reasoned pursuit of enough is far more important. I think that's a key goal that's important. And then a third trap we commonly see people fall to is keeping up with the Joneses, right? I mean, I knew somebody, actually, this is not even a joke, somebody was actually building a pagoda in their backyard because somebody they knew had a pagoda in their backyard. It's because they had to look that good, right? I mean, of course, they were a physician, and I mean, maybe that's very important for them, but it's just to highlight that, a lot of people end up buying the BMW because, their colleague drives a BMW, or they buy the boat and, the whatever plane, or, whatever cottages or whatever else it is, without having a plan. I don't think that there's anything wrong with buying any of those, but it needs to be part of the plan that's appropriately vetted. If you're well versed enough yourself, then you can decide how that fits into your big picture plan. If, let's say, if somebody is a sailor, has always been a sailor, well, it makes sense for them to buy their $20,000-$30,000 boat because they're going to enjoy that hobby, or use it appropriately through the year. And as long as they're not really impacting their investments and primary home and their health and relationships, it's okay. It's totally okay. But just buying it so that you look good and you have the club's membership is a huge waste of time, right? I mean, things add up over time. Or if you're going to use your cottage twice a year, well, you're better off renting it. That way it's not locked up and empty and doesn't need the repairs. Like, there's so many of these examples, right? I mean, a lot of people buy the most expensive home they can buy, and then fall prey to the house poor phenomenon, because a lot of your spendable income is now going towards your primary home, which shouldn't be used as an investment vehicle, right? I mean, it's a common thing in Canada to think that primary home is an investment vehicle, but I mean, abundant data suggests it's not. And then there's so many other financial traps that instead of building a plan, a lot of us, our expenses quickly catch up to our income, and then it's money in and money out. So we could go on and on about all these traps, but I think those are maybe 3 or 4 of the big ones that I wanted to mention.
Those are good traps. I have listed 4. There's obviously more than 4, but those are the 4 that I think are very, very prominent among physicians. And one of them was exactly what you said, following the Joneses, keeping up with the Joneses. And what I wrote was, what works for him or her may not work for me. So you mentioned, and I see this all the time. It's unbelievable. I have colleagues who come out of practice in their first 5 years of practice. They're swimming in debt. They're swimming in student loans. They don't know where north is. They don't know where south is. But they got their Mercedes-Benz for sure. And everybody wants to buy in Forest Hill, or everybody wants to buy in Oakville. And you're from Halifax, you don't know what that means, but it's the most expensive place in Toronto. And I don't know where that would be in Halifax.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, for example, the peninsular properties are like that. I mean, I helped actually a few friends buy houses in Toronto, so I'm quite well versed with the general area. And you're right. I mean, sometimes it's a necessity, but other times it's just kind of to look good, So I think
yes. Well, you can't buy a house in the peninsula and drive a Kia, right? You have to drive at least a Land Rover, at least. right? And then you can't drive a Land Rover and your kids go to public school. No, they have to go to private school. And when you invite people into the home, you can't have IKEA furniture. You're
Yeah.
going to have expensive furniture, right? And it goes on and on and on and on. And this is the hedonic treadmill that people go on to for the rest of their life. And
Said a
and like
fifth one was the one that was going to be that it's a hedonic treadmill, and all that happens is you're going to keep buying more stuff.
exactly. And you were right in saying that we don't know what we don't know. So who do we mirror? Who do we emulate? Well, we emulate our preceptors. Your brand new residents will try to emulate you, of course, because you're successful. You portray success. So they want to be successful, of course. But they don't know your challenges. They don't know your journey. They don't know what you've gone through to get to where you are. And so, medicine is truly see one, do one, teach one, right? That's medicine. See one, do one, teach one. That's how I learned how to do a defibrillation. That's how I learned how to do a lumbar puncture. And that's how I learned how to manage my money. But it's really a bad technique, a bad strategy. Because if I'm seeing what my preceptor who's been working for the last 20 years and went through hardship and is now finally successful, I can't try to emulate success within 5 years, right? And so we as physicians are not doing our younger colleagues any service by teaching them the wrong thing, and we have to tell them.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with I know some people who have Versace furniture, but they have the asset level and the value and the cash flowing assets that supply that kind of income. So I think you're going to have, if you don't already have it, you're going to have to get there if you want that kind of lifestyle. And you cannot have that lifestyle at the expense of everything else and dig a deeper hole for yourself. Like, I think that's the take home message that, nothing, we're not criticizing, a perceived luxurious lifestyle. Everybody has their own definition of luxury and comfort. But whatever is the choice, I think we have to figure out how that fits in and how you're going to supply for it. Like if you're working 90-hour weeks, to supply the Versace furniture, I mean, eventually it's going to crash and burn.
Right. And the Versace furniture will still strip away and deteriorate, right? And so what do you have to show for other than the 90 hours of work, alcoholism, and never know your children, right? That's what tends to happen. The other trap that I see all the time, and you can tell me whether I'm right or wrong, is not understanding the meaning of value. Okay, so we understand what cost is, but we don't understand value.
Yeah.
So a lot of us will say, well, I'm just going to buy term insurance because it's the cheapest. Or I'm going to do DIY because it's very little money. I don't have to pay too much fees. I'm not saying you have to pay a lot of fees, and I'm not saying there's no benefit in not paying a lot of fees. Yeah. What I'm saying is you have to weigh against your benefit. So it makes no sense for me to buy a bowl at a penny if I'm never going to use that bowl ever again. Yeah. Versus I'll buy a bowl at $5 because it's a nice bowl. I'll use it all the time and it's functional, and I can show it to my colleagues and to my wife and to my guests. But if I buy a bowl at a garage shop for a penny, well, what use do I have for that bowl? And so a lot of us will fall prey to the god of cost and not understand value.
Yeah, I mean, this is just to add, I totally agree. I mean, value is such a critical concept, right? I mean, I learned a lot of concepts around value in my art, in the pursuit of my art world interests. I mean, I have a big interest in Canadian art and some international art too, and this is a great way to explain, right? I mean, let's say you walk into a gallery and you buy a painting for $1,000, and then next day you don't like it and you want to go sell it. Good luck. I mean, the painting is suddenly only worth $300. So there's a difference between the cost that the gallery charged you and the auction value of the painting. And it's mind blowing, right? I mean, when I started my art journey and collecting and meeting other collectors, it baffled me, right? Like, how can I pay $1,000 for something that's only worth $300? And yet it's an acceptable common phenomenon that, all I'm trying to highlight is that there's a huge mismatch between the value and the cost. Some things are infinitely more valuable than the cost we pay for them, like certain types of insurance. And the other things, which are often depreciating things, depreciating assets, often cost infinitely more than the value they have in the long term. So it really behooves of us to really understand what's valuable in our life and how do we surround ourselves with things that truly carry meaning and value.
I see a lot of people who listen to, financial gurus. Whether people listen to me or not, or whether they think I'm a guru or not, is not the issue. But there are other gurus out there who says, never have debt, and yet debt could be a wealth builder. Never buy whole life insurance because whole life insurance is bad. Well, there are reasons why people should buy term, and there are reasons why people should buy whole life. Everybody's different based on their goals in life. Always do DIY. Never hire a financial planner, and that doesn't work for everybody. And so the price that we pay, if we get enormously more, then there's value, and that cost of entry is valuable. And so it's not just the cost we should look at; is what do you get at the end that's valuable. So that's one common trap that I see a lot. The other common trap that I see a lot, and I speak about it gingerly in my podcast because I don't want to offend anybody, and it's not meant to offend anybody. It is meant to have people reflect on this. And what am I talking about? As physicians, because we don't play in the financial industry, we clearly don't. We have a very, very difficult time understanding people's expertise and people's limitations.
Yeah.
I ask them all the time, would you want to do XYZ things in finance? And the first question they tell me is, I'm going to talk to my advisor.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to talk to my accountant. Do you think that your accountant knows about what I'm talking about? And they assume they do because that accountant is in finance, right?
Yeah.
Does finances, does taxes. But little do we know that there are different types of accountants.
100%.
There are general accountants, there are bookkeepers, there are tax accountants, there are forensic accountants. They're not all trained the same. Like physicians are not all trained the same. So, a lot of lay people think that we're all created the same. So they'll come to me and say, hey, Vu, I've got this little kid, or my little son or my daughter has this particular anemia. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a family doctor, right? I don't know pediatric hemonc. I'll refer to pediatric hemonc, right? Or they'll come to me and say, what are the different things I can do for this, big, huge staghorn calculus in my kidney? Well, you know what? I'm not the expert in that. I'll refer you to the urologist, right? I'll refer you to whoever I need to refer to. I'm not going to send an arthritic knee to an ophthalmologist.
No.
But the lay person thinks that we're all doctors, that we all do the same thing. And we have the exact same notion for accountants.
Yep.
And we think that my accountant knows everything about taxes. No, they don't. They think that my accountant knows everything about insurance. No, they don't.
No.
They think that my accountant knows everything about investment. No, they don't. It depends on what specialty they have. And it's very funny that we adopt the exact same, which I think it's understandable. We're human, that we adopt the same notion that our patients have about us. And that's a very, very common trap that I see among my peers.
No, I think that's a phenomenal comment because, you're so right? I mean, I've knocked so many different doors to learn about so many different things and then draw my own conclusions. But, the challenge around this has been that access to that quality information is not easy, right? I mean, that's why there's so much info out there about like the couch potato style of investing and, the ETF style investing and do it yourself and all of that. That definitely works for some people, but it's not the one-stop shop for everybody, right? I mean, we cannot say that everybody should do that. There's no data to prove that or support that. In fact, it can be dangerous to follow that kind of advice, depending on your situation. So I think one of our jobs as a community, as influencers or content creators, whatever you want to call it, is to have these platforms for these transparent discussions and good advice so that, people can then, have that table of options for them and say, okay, well, I want to go with this and that or whatever.
You bring up 2 points. One, physicians are busy, but I want the audience to understand we are not the only people who are busy.
100%.
Right?
Agreed.
Accountants are busy, lawyers are busy. Hell, my secretary is busy, right? She has to come to work, she has to go home, deal with her children, her husband, whatever else she needs to deal with. So, when physicians say that we are busy, I get it. I understand it. I'm busy myself, but we're definitely not the only one.
No, 100%. That's a whole separate discussion on what busy means. But
But coming back to your other point, if we are not the one taking control of our finances, who will?
yeah,
Nope, nobody will. Nobody will.
not at all.
As much as I have an accountant, as much as I have a financial planner, as much as I have a lawyer, a tax lawyer, a real estate lawyer, nobody will deal with my finances. I'm not saying manage. I'm saying taking control
Yeah.
of my finances better than me. And if I don't do it, then who's going to pay for it? Myself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I tell my patients all the time, you need to stop smoking. I'm not going to make you stop. And I'm not going to be at your house holding your hand every time you put your hand to your pocket trying to take a cigarette. I'm not there to do that for you. So you have to do it for yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the one suffering from it, with the stroke, the heart attack, the cancer, and all that. So if you don't do that for yourself, nobody will. And in medicine, we understand that. Like, we live with that every single day.
Yeah.
But yet we don't understand that we have to take control of our own personal finance if we want to be financially independent and secure. But why would I want to be financially independent and secure? Because it is a tool to lead to my lifestyle.
Mhm.
But also it is a tool for me to avoid burnout.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's an actual physical benefit to it.
Yeah.
And if we don't do it, who will do it? And I can't procrastinate and say, yeah, I don't have the time. I don't know it. Is it worth spending the time to learn about it? Yes. Do I have to be an expert? No. Are there people out there who can help me? The answer is yes.
100%. Yeah.
So this comes to my final cognitive trap, and it's the trap of overconfidence.
Yeah.
The overconfidence bias. I'm a physician. Actually, I operate on brains. I operate on people's heart. I'm a med-onc. I cure people from cancer. I can do it all. In fact, I can almost walk on water.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how we feel in medicine. And we feel that way across all aspects of our life.
I call it the do-it-all bias, right? I mean, so 100%. I mean, we acknowledge in medicine that we cannot do it all, yet we counterintuitively assume that we would be able to do it all in our own personal lives. So I think the bias there is that if we take care of our job and do the best job at our job, everything else will fall in its place. So I think that's huge bias.
Huge bias. And again, if we suffer from this overconfidence bias, then we think we can do it all, or I think I will do it all. But if you don't know what you don't know, you're going to make lots of mistakes, like I did. I made so many mistakes. It's not even funny. But we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. If we need the expertise, there's a cost to it. But the question is, will it bring value or not? So it's not just a question of cost. Does it bring value or not? Even though I have to pay for it, does it bring value or not? That's the question. And if it brings value, then I should do that. And I shouldn't be doing the couch potato thing, because it's not for everyone.
Yeah.
And so those are very common traps that I see among my peers. There's obviously hundreds and hundreds, because I can tell you many traps that I've gone into and we didn't even talk about today. So let's dive into the last topic I wanted your expertise and your insight in, because you've talked about this many times: growth mindset.
Yeah.
And scarcity mindset. So tell us a little bit about that, and where do we have growth mindset and where do we have scarcity mindset? I'm talking about the community at large of physicians.
Yeah, I think I'm going to start with the growth mindset. I think we have such a great growth mindset around our patients. We want the best for them. We're doing everything we can to support their needs. We're doing so much for teaching our next community and generation. We have a growth mindset When we are sitting on committees and when we are doing research work, it's altruistic and it's really contributing value, and it's all value add. At the same time, I haven't always experienced growth mindset in the culture of medicine. It's way more lone wolf culture. It's way more cutthroat in the back end. Like I sit on a number of wellness committees, and I have also a big wellness interest. I mean, we know that there's a lot of backstabbing that happens. A lot of people are very competitive, and it's hyper achievement culture that exists. And we often do put wrong things on the pedestal. In the era of social media and comparison competition, I think it's so easy to get very worked up and hyper competitive. And I'm sure you've been there. I've been there millions of times and still correct myself. Somebody else succeeded, so we don't feel happy about it. We say, well, they got there by chance. They worked extra hard. Maybe they're bad people. They're money minded. I don't see the culture of celebrating success. I find that it's very restrictive mindset when it comes to that across the professional community, that we still need to work quite a bit towards celebrating others' success and creating a network that's not a blame shift culture, that's not a lone wolf culture, that's not cutthroat culture, that's not a backstabbing culture, but an inclusive, broader, positive growth mindset culture where it's not you versus me, but it's us. I think there's enough out there for everybody to sort of progress in this. And so I think growth mindset is something that we need to take on as a challenge to build and really make it a part of our culture. I think that's a huge task that all of us collectively have at hand.
I've taken a lot of reflections out of what you just said there, for sure. So, Ketan, thank you very much for spending this time with me today. I know you've got lots of things to do. You're a busy physician like we all are. So thank you very much for sharing your expertise, your insight, and your philosophy around this. And so thank you very much, Ketan. Thank you for being on my show, and thank you for sharing.
Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine.
I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and at some point it became a little bit philosophical, but I think that was the point. The point of this podcast is to have you reflect on the different topics that we've talked about, and maybe there are things in your life that you find perfectly well, but there are some things in your life that you think you may need to change, and some of that may be traps that you weren't aware of. So I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and if you did, please share it with your colleagues, with your friends, and with your family if you must. And again, if there are any feedback or any comments, please, you can email me at hmfhd2020@gmail.com, and talk to you guys next time.
How is My Financial Health Doc podcast is hosted by Dr. Vukit Tran. Dr. Tran is a physician with a special interest in personal financial security and wealth education. Dr. Tran does not render or offer to render personalized investment or tax advice through this financial podcast. The information provided is for informational purposes only and does not constitute financial, tax, investment, or legal advice. Please confer with your advisor, lawyer, or accountant for specific advice.